My name is Juliana Stonehouse. I'm the Student Experience Coordinator working in Careerspace at Trent University. So pleased to have the YMCA on board with us today for the volunteer fair. Just a couple of housekeeping items. If you do have any questions for these gentlemen, just please put it in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. And with 5 minutes left to go at the end of the presentation, we'll address those questions. So without further ado, Steve and Edward, the floor is yours.
Terrific. Thank you very, very much, Juliana. We appreciate getting to speak. Welcome, everybody. I want to thank you very much for your interest in the YMCA. The program that Edward and I are going to speak about specifically is actually a provincial program that we run. I'm the youth outreach worker for the YMCA's Youth Gambling Awareness Program here in the Peterborough region. Joining me today, we have Edward Itliong, who is the outreach worker for the YGAP program in Kingston. How are you today, Edward?
Hi, everyone. I'm doing well, Steve. Thanks for everyone coming today. It's glad to be here.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a fun one today. So Edward and I are going to be doing a bit of a presentation for you. We've put together a brief PowerPoint to kind of show you a little bit about what our program does for the Y. We're going to talk about some expectations, some of the things that we offer, and we're even going to sneak in a quick little game with you while we've got you here today. So I'm going to start my show up here from the beginning. Quick little agenda for today. We're going to do a little introduction at the start. We're going to talk a little bit about the YGAP program in and of itself. Then we're going to play a game, talk about some requirements and expectations, and then we're going to show you a couple testimonials from youth that have done placement with our program in the past. I think they're good. Hoping they're good. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. So first and foremost, to introduce myself, as I mentioned, my name is Steve Keller. I am a Trent graduate. I actually graduated with my BA of Honors back in 2011. And then a year later, I wrapped up my Bachelor of Education at the School of Ed. I grew up in Peterborough. It's a nice community to live in. I've also worked for the YMCA since 2010. I have experience working with the Y and Camp coordination, working with youth affected by disabilities. Back in 2015, I coordinated the Youth Summer Job Exchange Program. It was a bilingual program here in Canada. Then in 2015, I joined the YGAP program. And in the last 2 years, I have done 400 presentations across this region to just over 9,000 people in kind of the Peterborough and surrounding area. So if you take a program with us, it's pretty busy. Edward, do you want to talk us a little bit about yourself too?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. So I'm an SLC and golf grad. I did fitness and health promotion at St. Lawrence College and also did my BCAN in Guelph. I've worked for the YMCA since 2015. I've worked with their fitness and aquatics program. I've also developed 2 self-funded program for health, fitness, and nutrition. So I've been working with youths a lot and doing a lot of outreach. Most of my job prior to YGAP is just visiting various communities and talking about health promotion, teaching kids how to cook, and at the same time, just staying busy with a lot of those holistic outreach work that we've been doing at the Y. Since joining YGAP, it's very similar to what I did before, but now I'm looking into just awareness piece instead of physical fitness and cooking. And I've really enjoyed it working with Steve, with some of his programs, and currently with our situation, we've been working remotely, doing a lot of virtual workshops, engagement activities, and all that fun stuff.
Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of our program and what we do with the YMCA. So the YGAP program was founded 21 years ago, in 1999. It was founded by the Ontario Ministry of Health in partnership with the YMCAs across the province. We offer free educational workshops, community event activities, kind of like the one we're doing today, and youth-led engagement projects across Ontario. The demographic that we work with are youth ages 8 to 24, as well as adults involved in youth development. So these are working with your teachers, your parents, your frontline care providers, group leaders, etc. When it comes to our own program, we do discuss addictions and mental health, specifically surrounding gambling. So a lot of that subject matter does come up. So there's kind of 3 pillars we have to speak about, and this is always important whenever we kind of discuss our program. First and foremost, when we discuss subject matter around gambling, we want to make sure that we remain neutral. The goal is to encourage informed decision-making processes. We promote both the benefits and explain the risks associated with gambling, particularly problem gambling, to promote an idea of a balanced perspective. We are not trying to tell people that gambling is the greatest or worst thing they will ever do. Similarly, we do a workshop on video gaming. We are not here to tell youth that video gaming is the greatest or worst thing they will ever do. We simply want to make sure they understand as much about the subject as possible so that they can make both informed and safe decisions. Now, the final pillar that we speak about, and for any of you that are working in health sciences or child and youth work, you will likely be familiar with the term of harm reduction. The harm reduction simply means mitigating risk associated with a specific behavior. So in the case of gambling, we promote harm reduction strategies such as setting time and money limits, considering the value of things before you decide to risk them, playing games that you understand. There's quite a list of examples of harm reduction that we can get into in some of our workshops. And in terms of workshop options that we actually offer, currently our program offers presentations for youth ages 8 to 10, 11 to 14, 15 to 18, 19 to 24, so colleges and universities, as well as adult professionals. And the subject matter that we cover includes subject matter surrounding general awareness when it comes to gambling. So we discuss terminology, risk, value, chance, terms like that. We do presentations on financial literacy, which I know are quite popular with high schools, youth job connects, and universities, discussing financial literacy and responsible gambling. Now, one we have that's always been popular with the high schools and elementary schools is our gambling webinar. So this workshop is entirely about video gaming and gambling, looking at kind of the blurred lines that exist between the two. We have a presentation that we offer on media impact and media literacy, looking at branding, marketing, advertising, public service announcements, social media, influencers. And Edward, feel free to jump in if I miss anything here. And then the last workshop that we offer, which is also quite popular, especially with youth kind of 15 and up, is we offer workshops on stigma and mental health. So we look at trying to dispel or reduce stigma associated with issues pertaining to mental health, issues pertaining to gambling, to addiction, and try to make sure that people understand what stigma actually means, how stigma is created, and the steps we can take to remove those barriers towards help-seeking behaviors and finding out more information. Our content is differentiated, like I said, according to demographic. All of our presentations are available as online webinars or in person with obvious respective protocols in place during COVID. We also offer youth engagement project opportunities, particularly for placement youth, which we will talk about in just a bit. But first, we're going to show you a little mock game, something we would play in one of the workshops that we do. So Edward, I'm going to use you for this game. This game is very simple. I have a spinning wheel here with 3 different colors on it. I have the color blue, I have the color white, and I have the color yellow. Before I spin this wheel, Edward, what color do you think it is going to land on?
I think I'm going to go with blue.
You're going to go with blue? All right, I'm going to go with white. Those of you that are following along, you can pick any of the colors that you see here. No trick to the first round whatsoever. Pick any of the colors, take a moment. So I'll give you 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, go. I'm going to spin this wheel. Edward said blue, I said white. First color we're going to have land on is... that was white. Looks like I was right. Unfortunately, Edward, you would have been wrong in this situation. Now, before I spin this wheel again, what if I were to tell you, Edward, that since you were wrong, you can either choose to sit out the next round, and those of us that were right would get to play again, or if you wanted, you could pay me $1 or $2 of imaginary money to play again. Would you choose to sit out and watch the next round, or would you want to pay to keep playing?
Good question, Steve. Well, you know what? Since it's only $2, $3, why don't I go ahead and play again?
Okay. So for those of you watching at home, you can choose to, sit back and watch the next round. Or if you've been right, you can play again. Or if you weren't, you could have chosen to have paid to play again. So Edward, if you were to pick on the second round, what color would you go with?
You know what? I'm going to go with yellow this time.
You're going to go with yellow? All right. I'm going to go with blue. I'm going to take your old color. Those of you following along, take a pick on your color. We're going to stop the wheel in 3, 2, and 1. Wheel's now stopping. Edward, correct this time. I would have been incorrect myself. Now, why would we play a game like this to start off? If we're talking about gambling, what is it that this game has to do with gambling? Well, first of all, if we define gambling, we understand it's risking something of value when you don't know if you will win or lose. And the reason that we use a game like this is it sort of reminds us of a cell phone game you might download for free, right? Many people, when they think of gambling, they think of casino games, they think of slots, they think of poker, they think of blackjack, they think of roulette. But gambling has really changed and taken on sort of new forms for players, particularly younger players. If you think about games that you download for free on your phone, what happens in those games when you get stuck? Edward, if you're playing a game on your phone like Candy Crush or Clash of Clans, what happens when you get stuck?
Well, it's really hard to kind of get yourself unstuck. It's basically those games like that. They normally offer like freebies or they offer ways to try and help you get unstuck by, buying in those mini purchases. similar to the game that we just played today.
Absolutely. Now, when we defined gambling a moment ago, we talked about it as risking something of value and not knowing if you'll win. Edward, if you had paid to play this game, did paying to play mean that you knew you were going to win the next time, or did it just give you the chance to keep playing?
Well, no, it just gave me a chance to hopefully win, but it didn't guarantee me that I'm going to win as soon as I pay.
Absolutely. So the question that we like to ask of our viewers when we play a game like this is, when you download a pay-to-play game like a phone game, and it offers you that chance to pay to kind of keep going, is that an example of gambling? What do you think, Edward?
Well, like you said, when you pay to continue playing, it doesn't guarantee you you're going to win. It just gives you a chance. And based on your definition, we are risking something of value in a game where you don't know if you're going to win or lose. So by your definition, this would be considered as gambling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why we often use this game during our video gaming webinar. I thought it was kind of a nice way to plug one of the activities that we actually do during our workshops. So any eligible or interested candidates kind of hoping to learn a little more, get kind of a quick little 2-minute glance at one of the many subjects that we discuss in our programming. Now, let's talk about placements in and of themselves. If we were to take on a placement candidate, the requirements that would be necessary would kind of be based on how the placement would look. So if we had an online placement, the candidate would basically require access to technology, stable internet, and ideally a phone so we can keep communication. The nice thing about our program is we can offer placements entirely online, so that way if, say, a youth is working from home, they can work virtually with our outreach workers. When I took a placement on this past summer with the Katimovic program, what I did at the start of each day, or at the start of each kind of placement shift, shall we say, is I just did a simple pre-shift phone call or a pre-shift email with the placement student so that we could sort of talk about what had they worked on the last time they were there and what are they going to be working on that day. If the placement is in person, which I know can be difficult right now due to the COVID pandemic, but this is just something to keep in mind for the future, the candidate would require access to technology, but they would also need access to a vehicle with a valid driver's license. Because our program takes us off-site when we're presenting in person, with me working in Peterborough, I actually offer placements in Peterborough, City of Kawartha Lakes, Northumberland, Hastings, Prince Edward County, and a little bit of Haliburton. So my catchment area is pretty big. So the other thing that's necessary is you need a criminal record check with a vulnerable sector screening. This is just important to have whenever you're working with youth. We also know that bilingualism is an asset to the program, as our presentations can be offered both in French or in English. The other thing is, prior to beginning a placement with YGAP, obviously the candidate takes part in a virtual interview with a youth outreach worker to determine a fit with both the placement and the candidate. Now on to expectations. Edward, what can we expect to see in a placement? Well,
during the placement, you'll learn about the workshop. You'll learn about how we facilitate and at the same time go through our webinar models. You'll be reviewing research conducted by YGAP regarding any addiction, mental health. You'll be assisting with booking in webinars and workshops online. At the same time, you'll be able to attend and be a part of that workshop and co-facilitate during presentations. That could be joining in a conversation like what Steve and I just did with a wheel activity. It could be running activities in games, or just discussing referrals to support different agencies. And prior to you doing that, you'll be accustomed to how the platform kind of goes. At the same time, you'll be familiarizing with with our community partners and support resources provided around you. It could be youth service providers, mental health support agencies, Indigenous service providers, credit councils, and whatnot. You'll also be attending a weekly Zoom conference with our YGAP staff and our supervisors to learn what's basically up and coming in terms with YGAP and our work. You'll be attending any professional development workshops or training modules taking place during your placement, again with approval from our YGAP lead. You'll also be completing an engagement project to convey a message of promotion and awareness in harm reductions and reducing stigma. And this is an ongoing project that you'll be able to participate in, and you'll be able to select the message based on what you've learned, and at the same time create a media piece based on what you've learned through your time in YGAP.
Awesome. Now, before we go any further, I did see a couple questions pop up. So first and foremost, I saw one asking about when can placements start. Generally, when placements start, when it comes to an online placement application, generally what happens, we'll have a placement candidate reach out to us, say, I'm interested in starting placement with you. We confirm it with our provincial site down in Toronto. We set up a meeting. I think when I set up with Brooklyn, it took, I think, a week, maybe 2 weeks to get set up. Ian, it was, I think, a week as well. Shaylee's took a little longer, but that was just because the nature of her program was she needed a building to work out of. And due to the COVID pandemic, I kind of struggled to find a building for her, but usually they're fairly quick. And then someone else, or actually the same person, asked approximately how many hours a week would the placement be? Now, this is where our program is quite flexible. Our outreach workers work Monday to Friday, generally. What would you say, Edward, 8 to 4, 9 to 5?
Yeah, about that time, yeah.
Yeah, but with that in mind, if we have placement candidates that are, say, doing a placement that they only do X amount of hours a week, I had a teacher candidate do a placement with me that was 100 cumulative hours, but what it was some days he could do a few with me, and then I might not see him for a few days or even a week because he had other obligations. We can set up a placement whereby the timing works with your schedule. We're quite flexible in that regard. And when it comes to the amount of hours, it's really based on what the expectation of your placement would be. I'm hoping that kind of answers your question. We can explore it a little bit more later too.
Yes, Steve, that sounds great. And I think that there are some people taking part in this session right now who are exactly that. That's like the teacher candidates or people in our teacher education stream who are looking for that volunteer requirement. So that's great that you can be flexible. Thanks so much for that.
No problem at all. In fact, actually, one of the placement students who wrote a testimonial for us here was actually doing his BEd when he did placement with me. That was Ian Yerbury back in 2018. So Adrian Ash was actually my placement advisor back when I was in Teachers College. So Adrian connected Ian with me to do his placement, and he was great. Ian was awesome to work with.
That's great. And this individual who's asking those questions, I believe that they are in the teacher education stream and just stating that they would need a minimum of 25 hours cumulative.
I think we could see about setting something like that up, Edward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're very, very flexible in terms with hours. And again, like our workshops as well are very flexible. We get them as by request. So yeah. We can definitely.
And I really like the way you're setting it up, because this would give a teacher candidate sort of, that experience, teaching or leading a seminar, which mimics exactly what they would be doing in their professional career down the line. So I think that's great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, with that in mind, if you're wondering on a little more perspective, like I said, I actually asked a couple of my placement candidates from the last couple of years to write me up some testimonials. So the first one here was actually from a Fleming mental health and addictions program student. So this was Brooklyn Clemens. She mentioned this past January, she had the opportunity to do placement for Fleming's mental health and addictions program at the Peterborough location YGAP program. At first, she was uncertain about the fit. I remember when we did our meeting, she had a placement actually booked elsewhere that fell through on her in like the 11th hour. Mm-hmm. So she needed to confirm a placement by like noon that day. So I was like, yeah, come on in at 11. We sat down, had a meeting. I mentioned it to lead site that I had a placement candidate that was interested. We set up, we had a meeting, and she mentioned that she jumped with both feet in, and I guess she says she has no regrets, which was great news. She said, YGAP gave me the opportunity to learn different aspects about gambling, addiction, and mental health. Obviously, because gambling is not taught in classes prominently as, say, drugs and alcohol, it was something that she didn't really have as much of a wide background of understanding on, so it was a nice opportunity for her to learn. Mm-hmm. She talked about conducting presentations and workshops. So when Brooklyn attended presentations with me, what she did was I would do the presentation, and then when it came time to run the activities, Brooklyn would help me co-facilitate the activities, get the groups, help with discussion, play the games, do the kind of wrap-up discussions. She also got to do the discussions around referrals and references to qualified agencies, because she was sitting in on meetings that I had with local partners. And actually, she was running a lot of those meetings. We had a meeting one day with Nogo Juanong Friendship Center here in Peterborough. Mm-hmm. Her and the addictions counselor talked for like an hour. I basically could have just not been there because they did awesome.
That's so wonderful. Now with that, I feel like we're going to have to wrap up for our break, and then the sessions start again this afternoon. Did you have any final words, Steve or Edward, that you wanted to share with our participants?
Well, I was going to say, like, I can certainly share the workshop or the presentation that we put up here, if they're interested in kind of peeking through and seeing it again, just because I know it's sometimes we have to move through the stuff because we know we have X amount of time.
Right. And you know what? There actually, we do have a bit of time for one more question here, and it's very important here. How and when would we need to submit the police reference check with vulnerable sector screening? I have mine already completed last week, which I did for a volunteering opportunity that fell through. Could I use the same reference check?
If it was done just within a week, I wouldn't see why not. I know generally that when the Y here in Peterborough takes on a new staff, we ask at Peterborough that record check be within 30 days.
There you go.
Some places may say something different. It may depend on, say, if you have a placement candidate that's doing a virtual placement with our Owen Sound or our Guelph worker, they might say something different. I can't speak on their behalf. But I know in Peterborough that when we do new hires and take new volunteers, we usually like them to be updated to within 30 days.
There you go. Okay, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. In the meantime, feel free to reach out to Steve or Edward with any further questions. And I just want to thank you both so much for taking the time to be part of this fair. And thank you to the students who took part as well. I hope the information was meaningful and that you might be thinking about pursuing some volunteer opportunities with the YMCA. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you,
bye.
everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.